Welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show, your go-to spot for all your disaster prep information and how to survive wild SHTF scenarios. Plus, we'll chat about the chaos of the world, throw in weather updates, and cover any topics the All Hazards Prepper has in his head this week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and join us on social media. Now, let's welcome your fearless leader and the brains behind the All Hazards Prepper, Blake.
Welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show. This is your host, Blake, of the All Hazards Prepper Show. Hope everyone is staying safe out there. Today, I have an exciting new guest on the show, the Joyful Prepared Wife. She is a proud product of what she calls the homestead renaissance that exploded during the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. New to the world of prepping and self-sufficiency, she is diving in time-tested practices of our forefathers and has gained a passion for sharing what she has learned through canning, gardening, herbalism, and raising backyard chickens, all a part of her SHTF plan. She and her husband currently reside in Georgia's Appalachian foothills with their son. So super glad to have you on the show. I guess if you just kind of want to tell our viewers what made you become a prepper. What's your prepping introduction story, if you will.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a joy to be on with you, and I really appreciate what you're doing to help people really who are on their journey just like me. I'm relatively new to this space, but I've developed a passion for it really quickly. And my prepper origin story really begins at COVID when um, all of a sudden the world shut down. But what was unique for me is I had an infant at the time. My son was born in October of 2019. And as you know, it was really when we got into January, February, March of 2020 that COVID came on the scene. And watching the madness that really unfolded there and the restrictions, the lack of baby formula, and even things down to the mask mandates and how that was affecting our family dynamic and how it was affecting him and being so little really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I had willfully put off and just was choosing not to see for a while. And so here we are now. We made the switch from that time. We were living closer to the city of Atlanta, more in urban, suburban type areas, much more crowded. We made the decision to drop everything over there and to move into more of a small town rural environment so that we could have the chickens and the big garden and we could just drastically change our lifestyle. And it has been so worthwhile. And so just diving into a prepper lifestyle for us has been incredibly rewarding. And I've just really enjoyed having the opportunity to share what we're learning along the way. And I've been learning so much from others in this community as well, like you.
Perfect. Yes, you said a good keyword there is the prepper lifestyle, and that's something I try to talk about here. It's prepping is not just something we do, before or during or after disasters. Really, being a prepper is kind of a lifestyle. It's not something that a lot of people think about. Being a lifestyle, and something I talked with previous guests on is that before, especially COVID, a lot of people gave the shame to the preppers, like me and other people that, they were like, oh, those people are crazy. What are they talking about? Why are you doing this? I've been a prepper for a number of years and turned a career into it. Before COVID, it was, you're crazy. You think the world's going to end or something. And then COVID hit and then it all made sense. So I think a lot of people like yourself have become preppers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's that was a world changing event in many ways. And I think that was one thing, good that we got out of it is people realized, how fragile, the world is with globalism and, how interconnected everything is. And, toilet paper not being on the shelves can cause world panic. So definitely a great story there. And I'm so great that you, have, kind of, change your lifestyle to fit, you take care of your family and survive, not only just during disasters, but during the everyday as well. Can you, I think you kind of hinted on this, but maybe talk a little bit more, especially about I find it interesting that you were living outside of Atlanta, and then next thing you know, you picked up and moved, to the country. Talk about, that this question's more, talk about a specific incident or disaster, where really started prepping, or where prepping really gave you that upper hand. But maybe talk about that move, and really what maybe people are on the edge about making a decision like that. What was that driving factor? What made you do it? A lot of people are tied down to the communities or where they work and all that. What gave you that freedom and to be able to do something like that?
Oh my gosh. Well, going back to what you were talking about and what I think that we were both in agreement on is COVID happened. And what was so remarkable about that time, and it's always going to shake me thinking about it. And I know that everybody wants to move on from talking about COVID because it was such an unpleasant time. I feel like whenever it gets brought up, there's kind of still this sense of ick, and everybody just wants to reclaim a sense of normalcy. And I totally get that. I will never forget the looks and the demands that people had that I put on a mask when I was carrying around a 4-month-old infant. And I'm sure that everybody probably understands, but at 4 months old, he is so dependent on reading our facial expressions and to understand what's happening in his world. He didn't know what was going on with the mask. He can't read my emotions if I'm wearing a mask. If everybody around him was wearing a mask, he's not going to learn to pick up on nonverbal communication. And all of these things were going through my head. And so I was a little bit more defiant about I did not go out into the world a whole lot with him at that time because I was trying to create as much of a sense of normalcy as we could within our own home. But I'll just never forget the way that the world just went along with all of that, and in a lot of ways still does. And so there was really just kind of this almost like table turning moment for me and for my husband. I think we're looking at all this and we're thinking, there are some people out there who are looking at this situation right now with COVID, and they're never going to forget how easy it was to get such a large number of people to comply. And so it just we never thought that we were going to live through something like COVID before, but now that we have, it really opened our eyes to understand, oh gosh, we really could live through something like this again. Because you pulled one thread, and it wasn't just that there was a virus, it was the supply chain, it was a number of things that just started unraveling really quickly. And to your point, you saw how fragile so many things were. And so when we were really looking at all of these different things, I think that the conclusion we came to, our safety and security is really on us at the end of the day. We can't rely on the government. We can't look to anybody else to provide for us. We can stomp our feet and get angry if there's no milk and eggs at the grocery store. But what can we actually do to change that situation so that we have a much greater chance of not having to go through this again and not having to depend again things that are completely out of our control? And so it didn't all happen at once, but we saw the value in trying to orient our lives into making move towards what's going to ultimately make us more family centered. At the end of the day, it is about prepping, but I think that this really has just fit our values so much more, and it's kind of aligned us more with things that really matter to us, but also where we're just trying to teach ourselves skills, and we're trying to get to a place where we are not, if this happens again, we're not going to be in a situation where we have to be quite as afraid. We've already put in the work to be vigilant and prepare ourselves for this moment.
Perfect. Yes. That's some great points there. And it kind of leads us into our next, topic. So with that, what's that next disaster that keeps you up at night as a prepper, especially for someone that's just starting out? What's something that keeps you awake at night that really could affect the population, and that's something that you want to prepare for?
It's so funny with that particular question. In my mind, I have been so proud of how quickly we have adopted so many new skills, and we've really learned how to work the garden, and our house is becoming this like really beautiful, wonderful fortress, and we're really enjoying it. But there is a scenario that keeps me up at night, and it's probably the EMP attack scenario. And I've got to be honest. I'm going to be listening to see if you have any experts or any people on in the future about this, because this is an idea that I really don't know how to address. I feel like all of my strategies that I try to employ with this just really fall short. But the scenario that I have in my head is, oh my gosh, what happens if there were some sort of an EMP attack or the grid goes down or whatever? I'm at home, my husband's in at the location, and our son is at school or something like that, and we have no communication and our cars are not working. That
Sure.
kind of scenario keeps me up at night, and I would love any tips or advice or feedback you have on that.
It's funny, funny you say that. Last night I actually had someone that is a subject matter expert in EMP on the show. So everyone, be on the lookout for that show next Monday. Yeah. So yeah, EMP is a tricky one. It is the shit hit the fan. After this, I'll message you some content. I have some people. There's actually. I've been listening to a podcast about this type of stuff, and it's something that a lot of people they prepare for, but you can never be prepared enough for. And ultimately, when if and when hopefully that never happens, but if and when it does, it's really going to change society. It's going to change the world. I mean, it's a disaster that no one really wants to experience. It's definitely not good. So yes, I think that's definitely keeps a lot of preppers up at night is EMP. Whether that be a nuclear attack that's caused the grid to go down. In myself, in my career as an emergency manager, one of my biggest things that I worry about. Yes, we worry about EMPs and that large scale stuff because stuff you kind of have to plan for, but it's kind of hard to. But today, as someone that's in the field, I definitely am worried about critical infrastructure, water systems, power systems, stuff like that. A failure, if it's by design, or if it's just it was a terrorist attack, or it was just the infrastructure was old and it failed. Infrastructure fails every day. Go look at your go type up how many full water advisories occur in a day in the United States, and you'll probably be amazed. So definitely, that EMP though is definitely something to be prepared for. Definitely something we can talk offline about. It's definitely interesting. So great story there. The next question, especially as someone that's kind of new to the prepping lifestyle, what are some habits that you kind of developed, if they're a daily habit, maybe a weekly habit, something like that, that keep you better prepared for maybe the everyday or that run of the mill disaster that could occur?
That's such a fun question, because that's something that has really become integrated into our life in a way that I hadn't really expected. And just as an example, we have gotten to a place where we're just always thinking in some way about how do we prepare, or how do we store a little bit of extra for the winter. The other day I was unloading some food and a Costco haul out of the trunk of the car, and come back outside to get a big giant bag of dog food, and my dog has his head stuck in the bag. He already got into it. And so we looked at that and we said, okay, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take half of the bag that he's already gotten into, we'll put it in the little container that we have at the house, and we'll take the other half, we put it in a 5-gallon bucket with some oxygen absorbers, and put that 5-gallon bucket away. And so now we have the food that we already intended to serve to our dogs, but then we also have a 5-gallon bucket that if that bag was open, we were not going to be able to seal it back and keep it good as long as we needed it to. So we were just able to translate that into prepping. And so we'll have to go back and get a new bag of dog food a little bit sooner, but we also have a nice little store of dog food in case we ever need to use that. And so it really is just trying to figure out these little strategies every day for how do we put things aside? How do we put things away so that we're not using all of our resources right now? And we're thinking about what we might need in a real common sense. And I like to joke about calling it underwhelming preparedness. What are some of those strategies that you can use where where putting aside the things that you might need in an extreme emergency are not really going to set you back all that much, and they're not really going to hurt that much. And in most emergency scenarios, the experts will tell you that it's really you need 72 hours worth of stuff. Well, you can go to Costco, and for $5 you can get 6 gallons of water. And just depending on how many people you have in your family, for me, I have 3 people. So, getting a few of those, we have covered our needs for an emergency for our water supply for 3 days. So for the folks who have been hit, by the hurricane in Texas right now, I hope more people than not have something like that on hand, because it's those everyday emergencies that could happen any time. But those are the things that you need, and so we're trying to think about that. We're trying to think in that way, and really just kind of what are the most immediate needs that we need that we can just go ahead and put aside for right now in a way that's going to prepare us for what's to come.
Yes, that is a great habit to talk about, and something I kind of want to unpack. And we might unpack this on the next segment here, but storing food, storing water. Yeah, the experts, me as a career emergency manager, as someone that's been prepping for a while, yeah, 72 hours is the base minimum. But I always say, if you're a prepper, you need to at least have, maybe it depends on what level of prepper you want to be. But if you're just trying to, just get started out, I would really have a 2 week supply of food, water. That 72 hours is maybe the food that you like to eat. And then the 2 week supply of food is those MREs, those emergency food buckets, using products like Artisan Farms, and keeping, ways to get water filtered and stuff like that. So definitely is a good habit to prepare. Something I've talked about here on the All Hazard Prepper Show before. But if you don't have a Costco membership or Sam's or BJ's or whatever is in your local area, go become a member of one of those stores. You will be amazed, even if you're not a prepper per se, how much money you will save buying, and then you're buying in bulk, so that way you always have extra as well. So great point there. Last question that I always ask everyone that's on the All Hazard Prepper Show is, what's that bucket list item that you as a prepper, what's your next, what's the big thing that you want to do, plan for, prepare for, or buy?
Yeah, so we moved from the city of Atlanta, where we were living. We were in a suburban home, much closer to the city. We had a third of an acre, which was really not all that bad, and we really enjoyed what we had at the time. And now moved out into the country, and we don't have nearly the land other folks around us have. We have 2 acres. I feel like the queen of a kingdom, and I have so loved getting to work the land and just getting my hands dirty and getting to grow using that land. And I am just a glutton right now for more and more land. That said, I think that the most immediate thing that I would like to get next is a freeze dryer. Aiming
Yes.
a little lower, but probably a freeze dryer,
Okay.
because when it comes to yeah, a little bit lower than like 50 acres. But when it comes to preparing and storing food, I think that freeze drying is really where you're going to get. It's an expensive investment, but man, if you really get into the habit of food storage, that is going to make your money go so far. Anything you get out of the garden is going to last forever. You are going to cut out the need for getting those MREs and those buckets of emergency food. You can make all that at home if you have a freeze dryer at home with that and some Mylar bags. And so in my mind, I would love to have a
Okay.
big, beautiful freeze
Yeah,
dryer.
that's perfect. Yeah, I don't have one. I've looked at them. Definitely something that great if you have a garden, or you're producing a lot of food. A shout out to Rogue Preparedness. If you don't, do you follow Rogue Preparedness, Morgan with Rogue Preparedness? She does a lot of
I
freeze
do.
drying, and okay, yeah, she if you want to get into that stuff, she's very knowledgeable on that. So she was on the show a couple weeks ago or a month ago. Probably 2 months ago now. So definitely good to do. Everyone, we're going to take a break here on the All Hazards Prepper Show. We will be back with the joyful prepper wife to discuss the topics of canning, working in gardens, and talk about homesteading as we're kind of in the late July here. Or the theme on the show right now is outdoor skills, and I feel like this is a perfect time to break out and talk about gardening and homesteading and raising chickens, and then canning as well. So we'll be right back with you. Stay tuned. This episode of the All Hazards Prepper is sponsored by Artisan Farms. Just the other week, I was going through my emergency food and was like, wow, I have so many products from Artisan Farms. This is because their products are affordable, they're easy to use, and what I love about Artisan Farms is that there are so many different options, not only for emergency food supply, but for everyday needs. Go check out Artisan Farms. I think you will be amazed with what you will find on their website at artisanfarms.com. They offer several products for emergency food, from emergency food buckets to even smaller little products that can fit in a go bag, even products that are dry good products such as butter, cheese. I have their peanut butter as well. I've used their butter before, and it is incredible. Tastes like real butter. Go check out Artisan Farms at artisanfarms.com. Use the code TheAllHazardsPrepper for a 10% discount when checking out. Again, Artisan Farms is what you need to survive any disaster, and is great to have, especially as we are getting into peak hurricane season. So go check out Artisan Farms at artisanfarms.com. Again, using the code TheAllHazardsPrepper for a 10% discount. We are back from the break here on the All Hazards Prepper Show. Today, we have joyful prepper wife here on the All Hazards Prepper Show. We've been diving in to her story as a relatively new prepper following the COVID-19 pandemic. She's been sharing some great tips here. We kind of want to use this segment to dive in about homesteading, about canning, raising chickens, and that type of stuff. This is a very big, popular topic nowadays. As you heard from her, it's a lot of people are doing this type of stuff. It's great to do. I feel like it's probably more needed. It's all about self reliance, and if you can, get what you want to eat out the backyard, that's even better. It's better for you, better cost savings and all of that. So kind of start us off, talking about your garden, what you're growing out there, and, maybe talk a little bit about raising the chickens. I grew up with 15 chickens myself, so I am a little familiar with raising chickens, but, try to talk about, what's going on outside.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see the homesteading movement starting to get a lot of media attention. I'm sure that you've seen all the news stories where it seems like there are a lot of very curious reporters that are saying, hey, it looks like all of a sudden people want to move away from the cities and have cows and chickens. What a curiosity. And, I totally get it, because all of a sudden we became those people. We just saw that as a pathway to freedom. And, chickens are the gateway drug. They're the pathway to freedom. And once you get this little taste of that homesteading life, it's just so good. And we've wanted more and more and more. We've started small, or we're trying to, because I have a habit and a tendency to want to, probably like a lot of people, just go in all or nothing. And so we started out with only 4 chickens for now, and we're still getting plenty of eggs, and a little bit more than what I can keep up with. And that's saying a lot, because I eat eggs all the time and we use a ton in our house. But it's been fun to dive into this. Our garden is bigger there than we probably should have, being brand new to gardening. I think that there's a sense that, you just have to kind of dive in and make some mistakes. And we certainly have, and we certainly are. And we're learning, through fire hose method. We're trying to do as much as we can manage. And so outside in our garden, I wish I could give you a tour. We have corn. We have a ton of green beans growing right now. The potatoes have been a big fail. We are not getting the potatoes that we hoped that we would get, but we're getting lots of cucumbers, lots of tomatoes, lots and lots of peppers. And have just commented offhand to my husband again. I feel like there are going to be preppers who have been doing this for so much longer than we have, and they are going to listen to this and just laugh at the newbies that we are. But I was telling my husband, we are eating so much healthier now. That wasn't even necessarily part of the plan. It's just been a benefit that we go out and I go to the garden and we get peppers and tomatoes and green beans, and you can't help but use this food that you're getting because one, you're proud of it. It's so much fresher, so much more nutritious. And so you just want to use it and eat it right away. And so I feel like one of the best decisions for our family's health that we almost made inadvertently is that we have this garden that we're getting to care for on our properties here in the Georgia climate. We also in the woods we have wild blueberries, wild blackberries, wild muscadines. And that's just been so much fun to go out and forage for our own food as well. And so the garden has just been an intentional, we're kind of crash landing into all of this. We're making lots of mistakes and learning lots along the way. And it's been amazing.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. I think anytime you start a new skill, failure is okay. You got to learn from it and pick up from it. And yeah, I definitely think a lot of people today. We currently, me and my wife, we just got married a few months ago, and now we're in an apartment. So a lot of people, feel like they can't homestead, they can't do those things. And you have the land to do it. Fortunately, and one day hopefully soon, I can do that. But even like myself, we have a little garden that's my dad builds planter boxes, and he built us a planter box, and we're able to actually garden outside a little bit and get our own fresh produce, which has been fun to do and try to keep it alive in this terrible southern heat. But it's I think a lot of people, it's all about self-reliance and really not having to go to the grocery store and fend for yourself there, and who knows if they even have the product that you want. And then you're going to pay a crazy price for it, especially today.
Well,
So I think that's a good point to do. Yep, go ahead.
well, and yeah. No, it's just to that point though. I think that even for me, something that has held me back in the past and probably would otherwise hinder me being able to prep effectively is that sense that you just have to do everything to the max and you have to do everything to perfection. It has been so cool looking at the online community of preppers and seeing that people who are living in apartments are finding ways to homestead. It's amazing.
Yep.
And even on our 2 acres of land, there is still this pull and this sense of oh my gosh, this isn't enough. I need the 50 acres. I need the cows. I need all the livestock. I need sheep. And we're really trying to fight that urge and try to work with the land and work with what we have. It's more than we've ever had, and we're able to get a lot out of it. But yeah, if you can be creative and figure out how to work with what you've got, I mean, the results might amaze you, and I know it's amazed us for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. I think definitely, as a prepper, you got to adapt and overcome, and, you got to live with what you got. And definitely, cool to hear your story there. So let's talk about, you talked about what you're growing in your garden. Let's talk about how you can. This is a topic that, it's a kind of as we've talked about on the last show with the Prepared Wanderer, we have, there's some skills out there that are kind of lost. This generation and maybe the previous generation kind of lost them compared to what our grandparents or great grandparents did, depending on where what age frame you're in. I think canning is one of those things. I remember my grandparents canning. They were kind of homesteaders. We tried to can. I kind of grew up in a homestead environment. We had 20 chickens or 15 chickens somewhere in there. That number ranged quite often, and then a large couple acre garden as well. So I think some of these skills are kind of lost. So talk about the canning. Talk about your process there. How you do it. What's worked well. What's not worked well. Maybe you can teach someone here. From the failures of that you've seen. Been going through it. So maybe walk through us the canning process.
Well, first of all, super jealous that you even grew up around that. That is such a gift, I think, to even be exposed to that as a young age. I'm feeling really grateful that my son is getting to go out into the garden and like pick green beans by hand, and he's getting to see me can. And when we make his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, we're making it with homemade jam. I never ever would have thought that this would be something that I would be doing. It feels like something just ancient and in a good way. It feels like you're just connecting with something that we've really lost. And I never would have imagined myself doing it. And my ultimate goal is I would love to have, this really abundant, flourishing garden that is producing pounds and pounds of excess tomatoes and peppers. We're not quite there yet with everything, and to get, this really big full yield. So a strategy that I'm using in order to be able to can fresh food is I'm going to our farmers market a lot, actually, where, if I have a couple of extra tomatoes and I want to can it, I will supplement that by going to a local farm or by going to the local farmers market while all of this food is just fresh and delicious and in season. And so we're still going to take advantage of what's happening in our community and of the really skilled growers that have a lot more experience than I do and a lot more yield than I do. But the funny thing about canning that I didn't expect. And so if I were to encourage and want to bring new people into the fold to the world of canning, I would probably say to them, I'm sorry, but it involves some science. It is not, it's easy to romanticize. You actually have to have a little bit of an appreciation for the pH scale. And that's really the biggest thing that I've come to find about it. I think you really take for granted. Again, this is coming from the mind of someone who has just been living off of convenience food her entire life. I never knew any of this stuff, and I was never exposed to any of this stuff. I was a TV tray microwave kid, and so now coming into this, and you're kind of learning like, oh, there's actually a science to keeping food that's sitting on the shelf safe, and that science looks a whole lot like appreciating the pH scale. And you want foods, it's really easy to get started canning foods that have high acidities, and even things that you can complement with a high acidity, like just put in some lemon juice for tomatoes or fresh fruits. You can get, most people have the things they need to get started with canning right now. If you're willing to just go out and get a pack of, pint ball jars. If you have a big stock pot and you're able to go out and get some ball jars and take some time to put in a recipe for you can make a tomato soup or you can, can some of your own fruit, you're ready to go right now.
So with that, how long, and this is some of like I'm not a subject matter expert on canning, so I'm going to kind of ask you some questions I've had. How long have you seen some of the products that you can last? What's the shelf life on them?
So I can tell you what I've been told by people who have done it longer and who have been the experts that I've been learning from. And what I've been told is I think that the CYA answer is about a year is a typical time that you can expect for canned foods to last. But what I've also been told is if you can correctly, your canned foods can last almost indefinitely. You want to check the things that you can. There are signs, the things that you're trying to prevent when you're introducing a lot of acidity, and just depending on the method of how you can, which I should probably back up for anybody who is just completely new to the world of canning. There are a couple of different methods of canning and preserving your food through canning. And the two most common are water bath canning, which I was mentioning. You probably have everything you need right now to get started at home, and it's really a lot easier to do than you might think. And then the second method is pressure canning. And pressure canning provides extra safety for if you have food like green beans, if you're trying to can meat, chicken noodle soup, that kind of thing, broth, things that are going to be higher up on the pH scale and they're not going to be as acidic. You want to some extra heavy duty cooking methods basically to make sure that there's no bacteria or mold that's going to create a hostile environment within that jar once you seal it. And so if you have like I said, like a big stock pot, you're ready to go. If you have a pressure canner, if you get into canning and you want to go out and get a pressure canner, kind of the world is your oyster. It opens you up to about anything. But when you're canning correctly, your food can last a very long time on that shelf. And so you're looking for a couple of telltale signs to see, is there any fermentation happening in the jar? That's a bad sign. Is, that could indicate that there's some bacteria in there. And so there are things that, as you're learning how to do it, that you know to look out for before you even open up that jar, that could tell you if your food is good or not. But you also know the signs to look for to say, oh, this is, it's been sitting on my shelf for over a year. This is still good to go.
Oh, that's some great things there, and things that I didn't even know. I think we did the water bath canning whenever we were growing up. Again, we were not too young. I was in middle school, kind of high school, middle school. But anyway, that was years ago. So anyway, that's some great points there. Talking, a little bit more about maybe the raising of chickens and stuff like that, especially it's interesting to hear that you kind of started this from scratch. Weren't raised in an environment around this and all that. What made you decide to get chickens, I guess, and talk about how, I'm pretty familiar with it. It's relatively easy to do, and they're, if not the easiest type of livestock to have. So maybe talk a little bit about the chickens, and encourage some of our listeners to maybe go and buy a chicken this summer or something.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, baby chicks are super cute. So that, there's your first excuse right there. And they're actually very cheap to go out and get. But, depending on how crazy you want to go with a coop, if you're looking around on Instagram, there are literally women who are putting chandeliers and wallpaper in their chicken coop. And I am not hating on that, but you just don't have to do that in order to keep chickens effectively. I don't think the chickens care as much as we do, but chickens don't have to be super crazy expensive to keep. And as I was asking around and trying to do my own research and figure out, I probably got a little bit more in my head. It felt, because I had never been around it, it felt like a very big task to me in order to do. And I wasn't really sure that I was capable or knowledgeable enough to keep a chicken alive, which is sad because I have a human child. But, a friend of ours who has a lot more livestock, he had put this in perspective and said, you can calm down about things like coop size and what the chicken needs, because the majority of commercially raised chickens really are raised and live most of their lives in the size of like a wooden. And so when you think about it like that, it's actually pretty easy to give chickens a nice and humane life. And they really don't need a ton. I find that we probably spend about 20 minutes a day really just checking in on them, checking in on their food, water. We might do a little bit more than some others when it comes to, keeping their coop cleaned up, and I'll go out and visit with them, that kind of thing, because I'm a crazy bird lady right now. But it's just not, even all of that level of work is not even required. It's just, we've just found it to be a joy. And so if there was somebody who was listening to this and they're interested in getting into this world, I would say go out and get a few chickens. Go out and get a few chickens. Tractor Supply has everything you need. They'll tell you all the stuff you need. All in to get a few chicks, you're looking at $150 at like max for all of the things that they need. And they're easy and they're cute, and then you end up getting eggs out of it.
Perfect. Yes, I have a little story about my chicken experience. Whenever you said the chickens were cute, so we grew up in the country, like I was saying, and my parents will laugh at the story because I probably haven't mentioned it in years. But we had what we called a chicken massacre. We had bought a bunch of chickens, and then we had I think a fox or coyote came and got it. We called it a chicken massacre. Anyway, so my dad tasked me. He said, "Blake, go to Tractor Supply and get 5 more chickens to replace the chickens that we have." And we were a week away from going away for a week for spring break, because usually you can buy chicks anytime other than the winter, but you typically buy them in the spring. And anyway, so I go to Tractor Supply. I'm maybe I'm old enough to drive, and definitely old enough to know better. And I come back from Tractor Supply with definitely more than 5 chicks. I think it was up to 20. So at that point, we had 25 chickens. And my dad was livid. He was like, Blake, what are we going to do? How are we going to raise these chickens? We're going to have to build a bigger coop, and how am I going to, take care of them next week? And we ended up building a thing for them. I had a friend come over and cape them, and when we came back from spring break, the chickens were, they grow pretty fast. They were my dad, like their heads were hitting the chicken wire up top, and so now we had to build another bigger chicken coop for inside the garage. It was a whole mess. My dad will probably laugh at this, but anyway, but that like you said, raising chickens is pretty easy to do if you have even less than an acre of land, as long as you don't live in somewhere that's got a homeowner association or something. But who knows? Maybe they allow it. Raising chickens is something very easy to do, and that way you get eggs, and especially if you have a large family. We were giving eggs away with the 25 chickens we had. We were finding all sorts of different egg recipes to have, but definitely recommend doing that. Kind of wrapping up here, kind of wrap us up, with what you've learned, as a beginning prepper. It's definitely interested to talk. Most people that come on the show have been prepping for a long time and been they definitely have different subject matter experts. But I'm very interested in definitely your story. But kind of wrap it up here. What is something that you want to let our listeners know about your type of lifestyle, and something that they should learn from you as well?
Well, I think if there's anything to learn from what they've heard on this podcast, is that if I can do it, anybody can do it. Getting involved in this lifestyle, we really just dove in head first. Within a few years, we made a real drastic change in our lifestyle, and you really don't even have to do all that. A little bit of preparedness goes a long way. And there's a verse in the Bible, Proverbs, that a lot of women will point to, and it talks about how the woman who will laugh at the days to come. And the reason why you can laugh at the days to come is because you have a peace knowing that you're prepared. Every little thing that you do to prepare is not meant to instill greater fear or greater concerns or to get you spun up about the future. Everything that you do to prepare is really meant to just give you a sense of peace. When I talk about going and getting a couple of gallons of water at Costco, 1 gallon of water covers you for a day. And so a few gallons of water is going to cover your entire family. And, these little things, it may not be much starting out, but it's incredibly valuable. And so I just hope that if there is anybody else that's out there listening and they're quite as far, we're not as far on our journey as other people who have been, oriented in this way longer have been. But I'm hoping that there's somebody who might be able to get some benefit from this and just realize you don't have to start big. You can start small, and it's a gradual build up to where you're just, the more and more you do it, the more and more you might get interested, you might build new skills, but really down the road, you're going to end up seeing that all of those things add up, and it's going to give you a sense of peace.
Perfect. Yes, you said some great things there. As a prepper, I don't prepare to worry. I prepare because I know when I'm prepared, I worry less. Whenever I see that hurricane coming up the coast, or I see that winter storm happening, I go, okay, I'm prepared for that. I got what I need for that. I don't need to rush to the store. It's really being a prepper is important to have that mindset. It's not to worry. It's just I call it an insurance plan. It's my insurance plan when something goes wrong. It's something that everyone really needs to adopt and become. Having this type of lifestyle, especially as we move forward in the future. So super glad that we had the Joyful Prepper wife on today. I certainly will try to have her on maybe at another time. We can talk about the garden and talk about if you've added something or added a new capability or something. So super glad that you were able to come on. Everyone, make sure that you're continuing to follow the All Hazards Prepper Show on your favorite podcast streaming platform, following our content. We have some great things coming up. Like I said, I hinted for next week, we have a subject matter expert coming on the show to talk about EMP. I think you're really going to enjoy that show if you really like the SHTF situation. So I hope everyone stays safe out there. The All Hazards Prepper out.